The Galactic Council chambers looked exactly like you'd expect if you crossed a Wien meeting room with the inside of a lava lamp. Floating pods of various sizes and compositions hovered in a precise geometric pattern, each containing a representative of some far-flung civilization. The lighting shifted between soothing purple and anxiety-inducing chartreuse, which was probably meant to be calming but just made Ambassador Kex Thornberry wish he hadn't eaten that breakfast burrito. Grand Councillor Zeeks, a being composed entirely of crystalline geometry and disapproval, focused all 7 of their sensory clusters on the human representative. Ambassador Thornberry, your application for Earth's admission to the Galactic Council requires several clarifications. No prob, Z-Dog Kex replied, deliberately ignoring the carefully crafted cultural sensitivity briefing he'd been forced to memorize. Hit me with your best shot. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber, translated simultaneously into 47,000 languages. Several energy-based beings flickered in distress. Please refrain from threatening violence, Zizix said, their crystals chiming in distress. This is precisely the behavioral pattern that concerns us. Your species has displayed remarkably aggressive tendencies throughout its development. Kex leaned back in his hover pod, propping his feet up on the control panel. Look, every species goes through a rough patch during evolution. We've totally chilled out now. Mostly. Except for Greg. Nobody likes Greg. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing Earth's evolutionary timeline. Our preliminary research has raised serious concerns about humanity's treatment of other potentially sapient species during your planet's development. Announced Sub-Councillor Mra Bra, a being who looked suspiciously like a giant space hamster in a formal robe. Oh, come on, Kex protested. That's ancient history. We're all about peace and harmony now. Did you know we have a holiday called Earth Day? We're basically tree huggers. Ambassador Thornberry. Zizix intoned. Their crystals now vibrating at a frequency that made Kex's feelings hurt. We have convened this special session to examine humanity's history of interactions with other intelligent species that evolved on your planet. The Council has serious reservations about admitting a species that might have eliminated its cognitive competitors. Kex's smile froze. Eliminated is such a strong word. I prefer naturally outcompeted in a totally fair and not at all suspicious way. We will begin, Zeeks announced, with your species' interactions with what you called Homo neanderthalensis. Oh crud, Kex muttered under his breath, wondering if it was too late to claim diplomatic immunity from evolutionary history. The chamber's lighting shifted to a particularly accusatory shade of magenta as multiple data streams began flowing through the holographic display. Kex noticed several council members activating their recording devices, which was never a good sign during an admission hearing. Ambassador Sub-Councillor Mr squeaked, whiskers twitching. Perhaps you'd like to explain why there are no Neanderthal representatives present for this hearing. Kex loosened his collar, cursing whoever had decided that sending a comedian-turned-diplomat was Earth's best chance at joining the galactic community. Well, you see, it's actually a funny story. The council leaned forward in their pods, clearly not expecting anything remotely funny about what they were about to hear. Kex wished he'd paid more attention in anthropology class instead of spending the whole semester trying to make the professor laugh with increasingly terrible Stone Age puns. Before I explain, he said, stalling for time, would anyone like to hear a joke about prehistoric dating apps? The silence in the chamber was deafening. Even the ambient energy beings seemed to hold their photons in anticipation. Ambassador Thornberry. Zizix's crystals pulsed with what could only be described as bureaucratic menace. Our records indicate that Homo neanderthalensis possessed comparable brain size to your species, developed tools, created art, and even interbred with your ancestors. Yet they mysteriously vanished around 40,000 of your years ago. Please explain. Kex straightened his tie, which was covered in tiny cartoon dinosaurs. In retrospect, maybe not the best choice for discussing extinct species. Well, you see, what happened was climate change. Totally natural climate change that had absolutely nothing to do with us. Completely unavoidable situation. Very sad. We even named a valley after them in Germany, so you can tell how much we respected them. A tentacled being in one of the lower pods waved an appendage. Our archaeological analysis suggests significant territorial overlap between the species, with evidence of tool use at the same sites. Oh yeah, we were totally cool neighbors, Kex said, warming to his theme. We'd wave across the valley, maybe borrow a cup of mammoth meat, share some fire-making tips. Super casual. The holographic display shifted to show a recreation of a prehistoric encounter. Kex winced as the council watched early humans and Neanderthals meeting at a cave entrance. According to our simulations, Mara said, whiskers twitching suspiciously, your species had a habit of occupying Neanderthal shelters shortly after they became vacant. Pure coincidence. We were just, house-sitting, cave-sitting. Besides, have you seen the real estate market in prehistoric Europe? Crazy expensive. A nice south-facing cave with good mammoth views could cost you an arm and a leg. Not literally, of course. Usually. Zizix's crystals took on a distinctly reddish tinge. We also note that your species introduced dogs into the ecosystem during this period. Hey now, dogs were a totally legitimate technological innovation. Like stone tools, but fluffier. And sure, maybe they helped us track things more efficiently, and maybe some of those things were Neanderthals, but correlation doesn't equal causation, right? The chamber's lighting shifted to what Kex was beginning to recognize as the color of skepticism. Let me put it this way, he continued desperately. Did we maybe contribute to some population pressure? Sure. Did we possibly have slightly better throwing skills that gave us an edge in hunting? Perhaps. Did we systematically replace them across the entire continent while simultaneously finding them attractive enough to have kids with? Well, when you put it all together like that, it does sound a bit suspicious. A being composed entirely of floating geometric shapes projected a series of statistics into the center of the chamber. Your own scientists have confirmed genetic evidence of interbreeding, yet no pure Neanderthal populations survived. How do you explain this paradox? Kex tugged at his collar. Would you believe it was all just a big misunderstanding? Like when you mean to swipe left but accidentally swipe right, except with species-wide consequences. Ambassador Zeeks intoned. Are you suggesting that the extinction of an entire sapient species was an accident? Look, we felt really bad about it. We even carry their genes today. Some of us are up to 4% Neanderthal. That's practically joint custody of the planet, right? The council members exchanged meaningful glances, their various sensory organs, crystalline structures, and energy patterns conveying deep concern. And hey, Kex added brightly, at least we learned our lesson. We haven't driven any other species to extinction since then. He paused. Well, not any sapient ones, that we know of, recently. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of multiple council members updating their threat assessment protocols. Perhaps Mar suggested delicately, we should move on to discussing humanity's relationship with currently existing intelligent species on your planet. Oh, thank God, Kex said, then quickly added, I mean, yes, excellent suggestion. I'm sure you'll find our current track record much more impressive, though maybe we could skip the part about dolphins. The part about what Zizix's crystals chimed sharply. Nothing. Nothing at all. Hey, did you know humans invented pizza? Way more interesting than marine mammals. Who's hungry? Ambassador Thornberry Zizix chimed ominously. Our preliminary surveys of Earth detected multiple species of cetaceans displaying remarkable intelligence, complex social structures, and sophisticated communication systems. Yet they appear to have no representation in your planetary government. Kex said, I was hoping we wouldn't get to this part. A liquid-filled pod drifted forward, containing what appeared to be a sentient coral reef. As the representative of the aquatic collective, I am particularly interested in hearing why Earth's marine species are not present at this hearing. Well, you see, Kex began, desperately wishing he'd paid attention during that marine biology class instead of spending the whole semester making whale. What do we have here? Jokes, dolphins are more like consultants. Very independent consultants who prefer to do their own thing, in the ocean, away from our governments, and lawyers. The holographic display shifted to show footage of dolphins using tools, teaching their young, and coordinating complex hunting strategies. Our studies indicate they possess problem-solving abilities comparable to human children, Messara noted. Sure, they're smart, Kex admitted, but they've shown zero interest in things like taxes or bureaucracy. Total anarchists, really. Plus, have you tried fitting a dolphin into a voting booth? Logistical nightmare. Perhaps the coral reef delegate burbled, because you've made no effort to accommodate their aquatic nature in your political systems. Look, we've tried communicating with them. We've done tons of research. We even made a whole TV show about a dolphin working for the police. Though in retrospect, maybe that wasn't the most accurate representation. The display changed again, showing historical footage of marine parks. Kex lunged for the controls. Wait, no, don't show that. Too late. The council watched in growing horror as scenes from SeaWorld played out before them. Ambassador Zizix's crystals had taken on a distinctly frosty hue. Are we to understand that your species captured these intelligent beings for entertainment? It was more like a cultural exchange program, Kex protested. They got free fish, we got to watch them jump through hoops. Totally voluntary. Mostly. Sort of. Look, we've gotten much better about it recently. Only after significant public protest and documentary evidence of mistreatment, MRR noted, whiskers bristling. The coral reef delegate was literally boiling with indignation. You kept them in artificial pools, made them perform tricks, called it education. Okay, yes, but in our defense, Kex paused. Actually, I've got nothing. That one's on us. But hey, we're phasing it out. And the dolphins have never once tried to overthrow us, which is basically forgiveness if you think about it. Perhaps a previously silent energy being flickered, because they lack opposable thumbs and access to land-based weapons. Exactly, Kex exclaimed. Wait, no, that came out wrong. And what of the whales, the coral reef delegate demanded. Our scans indicate they possess neural structures capable of processing complex emotional and social information, yet you hunted them to near extinction. But we didn't finish the job, Kex said brightly, then immediately wished he could recall the words. I mean, we stopped. We have saved the whales' campaigns now. We made them into celebrities. Have you heard of Moby Dick? Great Puerto Rico for whales. Well, except for the ending. The chamber's lighting had shifted to a color that didn't exist in the human visible spectrum, but somehow still managed to convey deep disappointment. Ambassador Thornberry Zizix intoned, Are there any other intelligent species on your planet that you would like to tell us about before we discover them ourselves? Kex thought about the great apes and broke into a cold sweat. Would you believe me if I said no? The holographic display flickered ominously. Because if you're planning to show footage of zoos next, I'd like to request a brief recess to consult with my government about updating my health insurance. The council members exchanged looks that transcended species boundaries in their unified concern about humanity's track record with their fellow Earth inhabitants. Perhaps Mara suggested, whiskers twitching diplomatically, we should discuss your relationship with your closest living relatives. Oh no, Kex muttered. The Planet of the Apes defense isn't going to work, is it? The holographic display filled with images of chimpanzees, gorillas and orangutans, each demonstrating tool use, problem-solving and complex social behaviors. Kex briefly considered claiming they were just very hairy humans, but decided even he couldn't sell that one. Ambassador Zizix's crystals pulsed with what might have been a headache. Please explain why these beings, who share approximately 98% of their DNA with humans, are not considered equal members of your society. Well, Kex began. That's a fascinating question with a completely reasonable answer that I will think of any second now. He straightened his tie, buying time. You see, it's all about, proper documentation. None of them have filed the correct paperwork for citizenship. A vine-covered pod near the ceiling extended a leafy tendril toward the display controls. Our archives contain numerous examples of these beings demonstrating advanced cognitive abilities. Observe. The chamber filled with viral videos of gorillas using sign language, orangutans solving puzzle boxes, and chimpanzees mastering touchscreens. One particularly damning clip showed a gorilla gently caring for a kitten. Okay, yes, Kex admitted, they're intelligent. But they're also very busy. With forest things, they've never expressed any interest in paying taxes or attending city council meetings. Perhaps Mara suggested dryly, because they are confined to designated areas and artificial habitats. The display shifted to show various zoo enclosures. Kex briefly considered diving out of his hover pod. Those are luxury resorts, he protested. All-inclusive accommodations. Free food, medical care, no predators. It's like a retirement community, but with more tire swings. Our analysis indicates these enclosures are significantly smaller than their natural habitats, the vine-covered being noted. And what is this concept of admission fees? That's just to cover operational costs. We're not profiting from our cousin's containment. Kex paused. Well, not primarily. There's some gift shop revenue, but who doesn't want a stuffed gorilla? The council chamber temperature dropped several degrees. Literally. But look at all the research we've done, Kex added hastily. We've learned so much about their intelligence. Did you know they can learn sign language? Though we try not to teach them too many words for revolution or lawsuit. The display showed a young gorilla signing help and want out. That's just a phase they go through, Kex stammered. Like human teenagers wanting to move out. Besides, we have lots of conservation programs now. We're trying to protect their natural habitats. The ones we haven't turned into palm oil plantations anyway. A crystalline being in the upper tier of the chamber chimed softly. Our records indicate your species has reduced great ape populations by over 60% in the past century alone. Okay, that's not great, Kex admitted. But we're doing better. We've got breeding programs, sanctuary spaces, documentary films. Morgan Freeman has narrated several of them. That's basically an official apology. Ambassador Thornberry Zizek interrupted. Are you suggesting that celebrity voice-overs compensate for systematic habitat destruction? When you put it like that, it sounds bad, Kex said. But have you heard Morgan Freeman's voice? Very soothing, great for easing species guilt. The vine-covered being rustled disapprovingly. We have also discovered historical records of these beings being used in entertainment and medical testing. Ancient history, Kex protested. We don't do that anymore. Much. Usually. Look, science is complicated, okay? But we've definitely stopped putting them in circuses. Mostly because they kept organizing escape attempts. Turns out opposable thumbs are pretty good for picking locks. The display showed more footage of great apes demonstrating intelligence using tools, teaching skills to their young, showing emotional awareness. One clip showed a chimpanzee outperforming a human at a memory game. So they're better at some cognitive tests than humans, Kex said weakly. But can they file tax returns, create reality TV shows, invent social media? No, and honestly that probably makes them the smarter species. The chamber fell silent as the council processed this accidental admission. Ambassador Zeke said finally, are you actually arguing that their inability to create questionably beneficial technologies somehow justifies their continued segregation from human society? I would like to retract my previous statement and substitute it with a picture of a baby orangutan wearing pajamas, Kex said. No, too late for cute distractions. The council's collective expression suggested it was indeed too late. Perhaps Mar suggested, whiskers twitching ominously, we should examine the archaeological record for evidence of other intelligent species that might have once shared your planet. Kex thought about the recently discovered Homo floresiensis and broke into a cold sweat. You know what? I suddenly remembered an urgent appointment back on Earth. Something about a banana shortage at the zoo. Primate enrichment facility. The chamber's exit doors sealed with a decisive click. The holographic display shifted to show a series of skull reconstructions, each representing a different human species. Kex wondered if it was too late to claim they were just an art installation. Our archaeological survey teams, Zizix announced, have discovered evidence of multiple sapient hominid species throughout your planet's history. Would you care to explain what happened to Homo floresiensis? Ah, the hobbits, Kex said brightly, then immediately regretted his enthusiasm as the council's collective attention sharpened. The completely normal-sized hominids who just happened to be somewhat vertically challenged. You named them after fictional beings from a story about a quest to destroy a ring of power. Naramamar's whiskers twitched in alarm. Ambassador, does your species habitually name extinct beings after fantasy creatures? Look, it was either that or call them those short guys we found on floors. We're very big on catchy names. It's not like we named them after their disappearance or anything. Usually. The display zoomed in on Flores Island. Our analysis indicates they survived until approximately 50,000 years ago, the vine-covered being noted. Coincidentally, around the same time Homo sapiens arrived in the region. Pure coincidence, Kex protested. They probably just went on vacation. A very long vacation, to a nice farm upstate, with lots of room to run and play with other hominids. energy being flickered irritably. Ambassador, are you suggesting an entire species voluntarily relocated to a mythical location commonly used to explain the disappearance of pets to human children? When you put it like that, it sounds suspicious, Kex admitted. But look at our track record. We name lots of things after we find them, sometimes even before they go extinct. Usually before. Almost always before. The display shifted again, showing more extinct human relatives: Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis, denisovans. Fascinating pattern, Z6 observed, crystals chiming analytically. Your species appears to have encountered numerous intelligent relatives throughout its evolution, and in each case, they decided to pursue other opportunities. Kex interrupted. Very ambitious, our cousins, always looking for new horizons, sometimes underground, for about 50,000 years. Ambassador, the coral reef delegate, burbled. Are you aware that your species has left a remarkably consistent archaeological pattern? You arrive in an area, evidence of other hominids mysteriously vanishes, and then you name scientific discoveries after them. We're just very good at memorizing things. Great pattern recognition. Probably got it from all the hunting. Not hunting other hominids, of course, just, regular hunting. Of non-sapient things, usually. The display showed a timeline of human expansion across the globe, with other hominid species vanishing shortly after each contact point. Perhaps Mara Ma suggested delicately, we should discuss your species' apparent habit of commemorating your competitors after they're safely unable to compete. That's not. We don't. Kex tugged at his collar. Look, naming things is complicated. Sometimes you name them because they're gone. Sometimes they're gone because you name them. It's all very chicken and egg, assuming neither has gone extinct yet. Our analysts have noted, Zizix continued relentlessly, that your species has an extensive history of naming things specifically to memorialize their absence. The Tasmanian Tiger Museum, the Dodo Research Center, the Great Oak Foundation. Those are conservation organizations, Kex protested. We're trying to prevent more extinctions by naming things after previous extinctions, which, now that I say it out loud. The council chambers had achieved a new level of concerned silence. Ambassador Thornberry, Zizix's crystals pulsed with what might have been morbid curiosity. Does your species actually believe that creating museums and research centers somehow compensates for eliminating entire species? Of course not, Kex said. We also make documentaries and put their pictures on t-shirts and sometimes clone their DNA to create theme parks, though after the whole Jurassic Park thing, we're a bit more careful about that. The chamber's lighting had shifted to a color that somehow managed to convey both deep concern and morbid fascination. So to summarize, Mara squeaked, your species has systematically outlasted, outcompeted, or outlived every other intelligent species it has encountered, and your primary response has been to name scientific institutions after them. Well, when you put it all together like that, Kex slouched in his hover pod. Would it help if I mentioned we also write really moving poetry about extinction? The council members began exchanging meaningful glances. Kex noticed several of them activating what appeared to be emergency protocols. The council chambers descended into chaos as the members activated their emergency communication channels, creating a cacophony of chimes, burbles, squeaks, and electromagnetic pulses. Order, Z6's crystals pulsed with authority. We will take a brief recess to deliberate. As the council members huddled in their respective pods, Kex couldn't help but notice they kept glancing nervously in his direction. He tried to look non-threatening, which was difficult given humanity's track record of accidentally on purpose outlasting every other intelligent species they'd ever encountered. After what felt like several eternities, during which Kex seriously considered starting a museum dedicated to his diplomatic career, the council reconvened. Ambassador Thornberry Zix announced, their crystals vibrating at what might have been their species' equivalent of a nervous tremor. We have reached a decision regarding Earth's admission to the Galactic Council. Look, Kex began. Before you say anything, I've got some great ideas for a memorial institute. You're approved. Kex blinked. I'm sorry, what? Your application has been unanimously accepted, Mra Ma squeaked, whiskers twitching anxiously. Welcome to the galactic community. Please don't hurt us. But I just spent hours explaining how we basically speed ran the evolutionary competition on our planet. Yes, the coral reef delegate burbled. We noticed. We noticed very much. And you're letting us in. Ambassador Zizix's crystals chimed diplomatically. Your species has demonstrated a remarkable persistence in achieving its goals. We believe it would be in everyone's best interest to have humanity inside the tent, as your people say. Looking out added Mezaram Ra. Rather than outside the energy being flickered. Looking in the vine covered being rustled. With access to weapons, several council members muttered simultaneously. Kex's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Oh, you're not admitting us because we passed the test. There are no passing or failing grades in galactic diplomacy, Zeke said quickly. There are merely survival strategies. This is amazing, Kex grinned. All this time I thought I was botching the interview, but actually. We would prefer Mezaram Ra interrupted hastily. If you didn't complete that thought out loud. Of course, Kex nodded sagely. We wouldn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. Speaking of which, when do we get our seat on the council? Front row several members responded immediately. With an excellent view of the exits, others added. Perfect. Kex stood up in his hoverpod. Well, this has been great. I can't wait to tell Earth about our new galactic membership. Maybe we'll build a museum to commemorate the occasion. The council chamber collectively shuddered. As Kex prepared to leave, a small notification appeared in the holographic display. Zezix noted with forced casualness, it appears we've received a formal petition for species recognition. From Earth's cetacean population. Those dolphins have terrible timing, Kex muttered. The petition is signed by every dolphin on Earth, Mara added, and several whales, with notarized translations. Impossible, Kex scoffed. Where would a dolphin even find a notary? SeaWorld gift shop the coral reef delegate supplied helpfully. Apparently they'd been planning this for some time. Kex stared at the petition, then at the council, then back at the petition. You know what? I just remembered Earth has some very important museums to build. If you'll excuse me. As he fled the chamber, Kex could have sworn he heard what sounded like dolphin laughter echoing through the galactic communication channels. He made a mental note to invest in underwater real estate, just in case. After all, humanity's track record with other intelligent species wasn't perfect. Yet.